Good morning or good afternoon now. Welcome to this afternoon's Muscles Matters 2021 online seminar on diet and nutrition. My name is Bobby Ansell and I'm Head of Health Service Development and Campaigns at Muscular UK. So building on the success of our 2020 series of Muscles Matters, we've taken your feedback into account and the MDUK Muscles Matter seminars will become a regular feature in MDUK's calendar. They won't replace, but will run alongside our live events when we can host them again. You told us how you found the seminars helpful and informative, accessible and easy to attend, and they're a good way to bring our community together. So over the next 12 months, we're running 2 or 3 seminars a month, focusing on a range of general and condition-specific topics that will include sessions that you told us you found the most useful, on research, on practical and financial support, and managing your condition. So each seminar will include the popular question and answer sessions again too. Our helpline remains available to anyone living with a neuromuscular condition or a muscle wasting condition, and do please contact us if you have any questions or are in need of support. We can help you with information and can either support you directly or point you to where you can get support. The number and email address should be on your screen now, and you can call us on 0800 652 6352 or email info@musculardystrophyuk.org. This morning, we're focusing on diet and nutrition. And we're very grateful to be joined by an expert panel. But before we begin, a note on how you can ask questions or make comments throughout this session. We have some advanced questions and we will seek to cover those later. However, we'd also like to incorporate some live input. And to do this, we'll be using the discussion option. The Q&A function, sorry. Please type your question or comment and we will feed them into the discussion. To help us manage the technical side of the event, we won't be calling on questioners to ask their questions themselves directly. Any questions that we don't manage to cover or don't know the answers to, we'll seek to answer through our website afterwards. And finally, a reminder that we are recording this session and it will be made available over the next few days, so you'll be able to find it on our website. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome and introduce you to our panel for today. But after I've introduced them, both, I'll ask our panelist Angela to deliver a short presentation on the topic of diet and nutrition and living with a neuromuscular condition, which will hopefully kick off the session and bring up a great Q&A session and discussion. So let me drink before I do that. Angela Reddy works as a senior specialist dietitian in patients with chronic respiratory failure for mainly neuromuscular diseases and long-term intensive care patients. Her role includes inpatients and outpatients at the Lane Fox unit at St Thomas's Hospital in London and the Lane Fox Remio Satellite unit. Angela works jointly with various neuromuscular teams such as the King's College Hospital Motor Neurone Disease Specialist Centre, the Community Dietetic Services and Neuromuscular Disease Charities. Angela's research area of interest is nutrition in the neuromuscular disease cohort, mainly muscular dystrophies and motor neurone disease. We're also joined by Neil Patel. Neil is 42 and has Duchenne muscular dystrophy and type 2 diabetes. Neil breathes through a tracheostomy and requires the use of a ventilator 24/7. Neil also has very limited mobility and he uses an electric wheelchair, and he's been using a peg feeding tube since 2007 to help with his nutrition. But I'm sure Neil will tell us much more about himself later during the Q&A session. So, Angela, would you like to take us forward with a bit of a presentation?
Amazing. Thank you very much, MDUK and Bobby, for inviting me. So I've been working in neuromuscular disease for about 13 to 14 years. And I'm an adult dietitian. I tend to see patients in clinic or from as young as 14, but on the ward mainly from 16 onwards. So yeah, my main cohort is young adults, and I see mostly inherited neuromuscular conditions and motor neuron disease, GBS, and other other neuromuscular conditions. Next slide, please. Thing. So the main, so this just to let you know, like the main conditions that I see, that's mainly DMD and motor neuron disease. I also see many patients with SMA, myotonic dystrophy, and then the adult onset conditions such as GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, MS, myasthenia gravis, and some rare conditions such as Rett's and Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. Malnutrition is a key feature of all these conditions, and they all affect eating, drinking, and bowels. So I tend to meet patients in clinic as soon as they transition or the first time they come to us, even if they don't have any nutritional problems, and I just get to know them and give them my number, etc. So they know where, where I am if they need me. Next slide, please, Kat. So why is dietitians or nutrition important? It is a critical part of our long-term management on Lane Fox. It's something we review in every clinic appointment. Malnutrition, in this case, I mean underweight, is harmful to your overall function and clinical outcomes. So if you're underweight, you're more likely to develop infection, etc. And both malnutrition and if you're overweight or obese are harmful to your breathing and respiratory function. So monitoring nutritional factors such as weight, intake, appetite is essential. So we tend to do, so nutritional screening is vital. It detects those with or at risk of developing malnutrition. And early identification is essential so that we can help correct malnutrition and get in there and being proactive. On Lane Fox, we weigh patients. If you're on the ward, we weigh everyone weekly. And we weigh them at every clinic appointment. We have standing scales, hoist scales, wheelchair scales, seated scales. I tend to keep a note of the wheelchair weight, so it avoids patients having to get out of their wheelchairs during their clinic appointment. So we can just weigh them in the chair and keep an eye on the weight from there. So so nutritional screening is vital. Next slide, please. So just to move on to different factors, so things to consider. Next slide, please. So nutritional considerations. The first thing I wanted to talk about is weight. This slide shows the trajectory of weight in DMD. As you can see, from about young onset to kind of mid-teens, the focus is on healthy eating dietary advice. However, that changes. I'm just telling my colleagues to keep it low. That changes to weight increasing dietary advice from about mid to late teens. However, once the weight is stable after, whether it's supplementary feeding via oral route or via a tube, patients can, weight tends to increase, and we need to, often just try and maintain weight or decrease as well. So overweight and obesity are common in children, preteen to mid-teens in DMD, but malnutrition and weight loss from teenage to adulthood. I find this change from the mindset, from thinking from healthy eating to suddenly having to eat high calorie, high fat, high protein, sometimes can be difficult. So I start talking about things early, even before my help is needed. So next slide, please. Thank you. So weight increase tends to coincide with loss of ambulation, steroid therapy, as that affects the appetite, and this happens around 8 to 12 years of age. So what causes one to become overweight? We get energy from food that we eat and drink, as the body needs energy to function every day. So it all breaks down into energy in the body. If the energy from the food you eat is equal to the energy your body uses, that is when you're in energy balance or weight stable. However, if the energy that you get from food is more than what your body needs to function, or be active, etc., then that is what we call positive energy balance or weight gain. Again, this happens, it might be due to the impact of the steroids and increasing appetite or reduced mobility. It doesn't mean you have to eat less, it just means you have to think about what you choose to eat so that your body doesn't yield or break down into more energy than you need. But this we can manage this. So it is difficult to lose weight, but not impossible. But prevention is better than cure. So monitoring is essential. Next slide, please. Thank you. So moving on to height. So if you're non-ambulatory, we can use alternative measurements to assess height to monitor body composition. For example, in the top picture, measuring your ulnar length, which is from your elbow to just above your to the corner of your wrist, or measuring your mid-upper arm circumference to estimate your BMI. So the top one, the ulnar length, measures estimates your height, and the bottom one estimates your BMI. Now, this is not validated in neuromuscular diseases. However, I find serial measurements are helpful for you to monitor where you're at. But I find the best thing to do is to look at someone, eyeball them, and you could do also waist circumference measurements, etc. But eyeballing is the best way to assess someone's body composition. So next slide, please, and help us monitor, etc. So using BMI to define malnutrition in neuromuscular disease, especially children, early onset, is problematic. It doesn't accurately represent body composition. I don't tend to focus on BMI in conditions such as DMD, SMA, etc. There's decreased lean body mass, so decreased lean body mass, extra and increased intracellular fat mass characterize these conditions. So use BMI with caution. As I said, other possible methods to estimate your body composition is you can use skin fold thickness measurements, mid-arm circumference, etc., to assess fat and protein stores. As I said, serial measurements are helpful to do this. Thank you. Next slide, please. So how much of energy do you need to function every day? So when you're unwell, you need more energy than when you're well. So it varies, it changes. In dietetics, we tend to have predictive equations to help us estimate how much energy people need when they're unwell or when they're well, etc. I find there are no predictive equations in neuromuscular disease, but I find that monitoring, getting a good weight and intake history can help determine where we're at when you're in a well state, what we're aiming for, or whether we need to increase your calories, whether we need to decrease, whether we need to keep it the same. So that's how I keep an eye on my patients' energy needs. When you're unwell, like I said, you need more. We often will start at 25 calories per kilogram, but this might be too much for when you're well and if you're non-ambulatory, and we might go up to 30 if you're needing to gain weight, etc. And this is if you're unwell or in hospital. This is just a study to show that there's loss of muscle mass. Loss of muscle mass is associated with lower resting energy expenditure. So that just means how much of energy your body needs to function when you're at rest. So it's just much lower. So we just have to keep an eye that the requirements in energy is low when you're well. So energy needs should be individualized in neuromuscular disease. I feel very strongly about this, and just everyone's different, and it should be based on history, ambulation, and activity. So next slide, please. So moving on to, so a negative energy balance. So it might mean eating less, not less frequency, but less in terms of calories than what your body needs, might lead to a loss of lean body mass. But I'll go on to talk about that in the next 1 or 2 slides, because that to explain how you can still eat eat the right type of foods to avoid the body using your energy in the wrong way, basically, because if you don't have enough carbohydrates, it will use other sources of energy, and that's how it might result in a loss of lean body mass. So in terms of protein, there's little research on how much of protein you need in neuromuscular disease, but we will start usually at 1.2 calories per kilogram, especially when you're unwell. And that's based on a healthy weight. However, it's something we keep an eye and focus on as well. Next slide, please. So yes, so I thought I'd build in two of the questions I had in advance, because this follows on really nicely. So how do you lose weight without losing muscle mass? As I said, everything that you eat yields calories, and that's the energy for the body. So carbohydrates and protein breaks down to 4 calories for every gram that you eat. What you add to it can increase the calories. So if you add, I don't know, oil, butter, etc. And then fat breaks down into 9 calories per kilogram, so more than twice that of carbohydrate and protein. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy for the body. It's the fuel for your body, so it's what the body will use first. In their absence, so if you don't eat enough carbohydrates, but you might eat a lot of protein and fat, the body will use the protein and fat to basically make glucose, and that might result in losing muscle. So you have to make sure you have a good amount of carbohydrates regularly in your diet. So you think about the type, the quality, and the quantity of carbohydrates are important. So opting for the more complex, healthy sources of carbohydrates, such as the starchy, fibrous foods, vegetables, fruits, beans, and pulses, are better. It keeps you fuller for longer. It breaks down slowly, rather than the high sources of simple carbohydrates like sugars, etc. So the plate model just demonstrates basically what you should aim for in your meals. So if you're eating, so it just means that 1/3 of your plate should be your starchy carbohydrates, so whether it's bread, pasta, rice, etc., couscous. 1/3 of your plate should be your vegetables, and the smallest third, as you can see where the chicken is there, that's your protein. So that should be the smaller portion compared to the carbohydrate and the vegetables. And then you should make sure you're having your milk and dairy, which is about 2 to 3, or calcium sources, 2 to 3 portions a day. And this is the sugary ones, like the sweets and chocolates, which you don't need. However, if sometimes you have to opt for those if you are trying to gain weight. But this is just to show the healthy plate model, to make sure you're getting adequate carbohydrate and protein and fat sources, which are the main nutrients that the body needs. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, and we move on very nicely to the second question I had in advance is, I struggle to get enough protein as I don't have a big appetite. Top tips. So I've listed food sources of protein, and in brackets is the grams of protein per 100 grams. So like you can see, if you eat meat, chicken and eggs, etc., lean chicken and lean meat are quite high, 32 grams per 100 grams, or 31 in lean meat. Eggs are 12.5. Tuna canned in brine is about 20, grilled salmon 24, half fat cheddar is more than full fat cheddar, so about 33 grams of protein per 100 grams. Peanut butters, almond butters, etc., also very high in protein. And if you're a vegetarian, there's beans, tofu, nuts are a good source of protein. Yogurts, there's the high protein, low fat yogurts, which are also very good. That's Skyr, Phage, Arla. One little pot is about 17 grams, but they are 10 grams of protein per 100 grams. And then, of course, you get protein in, in grains as well, and there's corn. Next slide, please. There are other sources which can be prescribed by a dietitian. So this is protein supplements. So if you need these can be prescribed as well. So you have to make sure you're getting enough energy. And these, I've got some samples here. So for example, this is a little ProSauce jelly. So no, sorry, this is the ProSauce Plus. This is 15 grams of protein in 30 in a 30-gram sachet, and you can add this to any food and drink. There's the jelly, which is 20 grams of protein. There's another company does these little shots, and some patients use these. It's a 60 ml bottle, and that's also 20 grams of protein. And I haven't brought, sorry, the bottom, the last two, 40 sub compact protein and Freshubin 3.2 kcal. That is if you need energy and protein. They're both high protein supplements in 125 mils. And some patients drink it like shots, 60 ml shots, or we can add it to food. There's always ways. I tend to get a lot of recipes from patients, mums, dads, etc., and I keep it so to help other people make sure they get enough proteins. I hope that answers the question well, but you'd need a referral from the GP for these supplements. Or next slide please. So how do we assess your nutritional status? The things we tend to keep an eye on, like I said, is your body weight, your fat stores, your anthropometry, how much your percentage weight loss, and is that clinically significant. If you've lost, say, 5 or more % in a short space of time, then we think, okay, you need help, you need, high calorie drinks, or do we need to think about other sources of nutrition? We look at how much you're eating, so what your energy and protein intakes are like, and whether you have any other clinical conditions. Do you have diarrhea? Do you have vomiting? Are your bloods okay? So do you have any wounds? These are the things we tend to keep an eye on. However, next slide please. Nutritional so it's complicated and confounded in neuromuscular disease by many other nutritional issues, and I've listed these here. So for example, chewing fatigue, this is something we tend to monitor and keep an eye on in clinic, and this is associated with your bulbar muscle loss. It might just mean that you change your main meal to like lunchtime, where you have more energy, and because chewing fatigue tends to get worse during the day, and it might mean that you have something that's easy and doesn't require chewing in the evening, such as soup, for example. Or if you're on a ventilator, going on your breathing machine before to give you a little bit of energy to ensure you get that helps with the fatigue from the chewing. So we keep an eye on that. Dysphagia, so problems with swallowing and aspiration. Have you had any infections from that? Have you been on any antibiotics? Are you coughing and choking? Are you leaving out foods that cause problems? Another thing we keep an eye on is how long you're taking to finish your meals. It might mean 5 years ago it was 10 minutes, now it's 20 minutes. So it's just something we keep an eye on to give us an indication of how proactive or what we do. Have you modified the texture of your diet? Are you on a soft or are you on a puree diet? So again, that impacts on your nutrition. Are you eating less than normal? Do you have periods of a low appetite? Some patients can feed themselves. Are they losing the ability to help to self-feed? And of course, weight loss. And problems like constipation, because as the muscle loss around the tummy, things tend to sit in their stomach for longer, or do they just have very slow movement? So we keep an eye on that. So next slide please. So that's normally our priorities. So it just means that we might start talking about how we manage it. So do we go for high calorie food and high calorie drinks, supplements like I've shown you, or it might mean supplementary feeding via a tube. It doesn't mean you cannot eat, it just means you need a bit of help to better meet your nutritional needs. So this is a gastrostomy or PEG tube, and Neil will tell you more about that, but it's a long-term tube. It can last for many years. The longest I've seen it last was in a young gentleman with Duchenne's for 10 years. Mum still takes amazing care. It was so clean, he just popped out one day. She kept the tract open, came back into hospital, into the Lane Fox, and it was fine. I haven't seen him since then, so he's doing well. But like I said, I like to think of tell patients think of it like having a piercing or your ears pierced, and Neil will tell you more. People tell me it doesn't feel like anything after a certain time, but this will just help better meet your nutritional needs. Next slide, please. So a PEG, or the full word is percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy. It's inserted through the abdominal wall, like I said, like a piercing into the stomach to provide you with additional feed, fluid, and medicines. It's inserted using a scope that goes down the mouth. On the Lane Fox unit, we do it on the ward, and there's a respiratory consultant, there's a gastroenterology consultant, and an anesthetic consultant present. You're asleep throughout the procedure. It takes about 20 minutes. If you need a respiratory assessment before undergoing one of these, basically undergoing this procedure. We spend a lot of time talking about care and make sure everyone is set up in the community before sending them home. Next slide, please. The advantages of having supplementary feeding: it's there to support normal eating, not to replace it. It doesn't mean you cannot eat, it just means you might need a bit more. You might meet 50% of your intake from food, 50% from a feed. There are various methods of feeding. Neil will tell you we have many people that we see here with various jobs, school, university, and the feed that you're on should fit into your normal lifestyle, not the other way around. So that we can, it can be discussed at that point as well. It allows for medications and additional water as well to go down the tube. It allows for feeding during illness, because you might feel too unwell to eat as much as you need when you're unwell. There are different types of tubes. They're all very discreet. No one will know it's there unless you choose to tell them. And there's reduced pressure to eat. Patients and families tell me, report that they feel excited, that they can eat what they want, when they want, that they can enjoy it at their own pace, and of course gain weight as well. Yeah, so like I said, we have various patients in school, university, working, and that should fit into your daily lifestyle. Next slide, please. We do spend time talking about just basically giving patients, educating them about the PEG. So when it's when you have to think about it, it's not like, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? Because previously, when I first started working in this area, weight loss would be so drastic, you talk about it then it would take someone about 6 months to decide whether they want one or not, and then it would be about another 6 months to get all the professionals that need to be there to ensure a safe insertion. So it was taking quite a lengthy time. So now on the unit we have a weekly list, and it gets done on the ward. Like I said, you have a respiratory consultant, anesthetic, and specialist gastroenterologist who puts tubes into our neuromuscular cohort. But we spend a lot of time. You can speak to someone. I offer all my patients someone to talk to that lives with a condition, that has a feeding tube, doesn't prevent you from eating. It's all very individualized, and we spend a lot of time talking about care as well. Yes, so, and there are many other options besides like I said, in terms of tubes that can go in. Thank you. Next slide, please. The other consideration I commonly see is constipation. So I wanted to mention this. This increases with age, and this happens as a result of muscle loss or altered, like, your involuntary muscle function, so your abdominal muscle weakness. Also, if you're less mobile, you're immobile, and often inadequate fluid and fiber intake. So we make sure, so the management, you get extra fluid, you might need a fiber formula. The sachet high fiber on the side, I've started to use that regularly. It is a soluble fiber in a 30-gram little sachet, can be added to food, drink, or through the tube. Or do you need a bowel regime such as medication? Some of these meds, you need to make sure you have adequate fluid for it to work well, such as a macrogol and senna, and or sodium docusate, which is a stool softener. Or lactulose works well, but we don't tend to use it a lot in neuromuscular because it can cause abdominal cramps and abdo pain. So yeah, we just keep an eye on that. So thank you. Next slide, please. So moving on, I wanted to mention vitamin D and calcium. They're very important for bones. Vitamin D is produced in the skin after exposure to sunlight. Vitamin D is essential to absorb calcium. They work together. If you've got low vitamin D status or low blood vitamin D, then you'll have insufficient calcium in your bones. So monitoring of this is important. Calcium is required for bone formation. Vitamin D regulates regulates calcium levels by aiding active calcium absorption. It stimulates the absorption of another compound that's important in bone formation as well, which is called phosphate. It also reabsorbs calcium along with a hormone that's also very important to maintain calcium levels in your blood, called parathyroid hormone, or PTH, and it mobilizes calcium from the skeleton. So it's very important to have both checked. Vitamin D deficiency can lead to bone weakness. So this can be checked and monitored by having a blood test. Thank you. Next slide, please. So if it's inadequate, if your blood levels are low, it can be added separately to reach a recommended intake. So in 4 to 8-year-olds, the recommended intake is 8 milligrams, 9 to 18, 1300 milligrams, and 400 international units of vitamin D. So when the sun is shining, get outside 2 to 3 times a week for at least 15 minutes. If you're darker skinned, like me, you might need a bit of extra time in the sun because it's harder to absorb the vitamin D from the sun if you're darker skinned. In the winter, we often say it's good to take a vitamin D supplement, but in the summer you can get the best vitamin D source is the sunshine. However, the other sources of vitamin D are oily fish, egg yolks, meat, offal, milk. Breakfast cereals are fortified with it, and yogurts are fortified, and margarine as well. Calcium, you can get that from cheese, milk, yogurt, tofu, sardine and pilchards with bones only, and broccoli as well. So yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. And this is just a little, just to show some calcium quantities in food, and yeah, just to where and what the requirements are. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to say that nutritional, so vitamin and mineral supplements are not required if you're eating a balanced diet, because if you're eating a varied diet, you should get a supply of vitamins and minerals from that. And also taking large individual doses of supplements have no proven benefits and can be harmful. So my advice would be, if you're worried about something, to get it checked before and get it checked with a GP before taking any individual large doses. You could take a multivitamin and mineral if you think you are not eating a varied diet, but again, that can be prescribed through the GP as well. Thank you. Next slide, please. I think that's my last slide is just to emphasize that it's okay, we're here to help, and then regular nutritional monitoring is important. Proactive intervention is vital. Think about, if whether you need to gain weight, you need to keep your weight stable, etc. But getting a balanced diet, early discussion around supplementary feeding, so whether you need high calorie drinks or feeding tubes, and of course getting your breathing assessment checked as well if you are undergoing any procedures, especially for a PEG. Thank you. That's it from me. I hope that was helpful. Sorry, my colleagues clapping for me in the office.
Thanks so much, Angela. That was so brilliant and so comprehensive. Does everyone, maybe it's now time to move on to our Q&A session. And actually, at this moment, I'd like to give Neil. I think this one probably is first for Neil. So somebody sent a question, and they've said, "I've been advised that I should have a PEG fitted, but I'm a bit worried. Could you advise?" So Neil, is that something that you would feel that maybe you could share your experience with?
Yeah, I think getting the PEG was like one of the best decisions I made, because it instantly takes all the pressure here, like in terms of needing to eat just to stay healthy. Like I think the peg like is relatively like straightforward to like procedure to do in most cases, and I find that like it just takes all the worry out of eating.
Thanks, Neil. Angela, would you like, from your experience of working with many people who've had PEGs, is there anything you could offer on this one?
I would say, yeah, in addition is, yeah, so the less pressure to eat, but in terms of, we tend to bring people, patients in on like the day before or 2 days before the procedure, if they need their respiratory checked. The procedure happens on the ward and we discharge them a day or two after the procedure. Like Neil said, you know, we would have an assessment before with a consultant here, the respiratory consultant, but you know, it can very easily be managed, and you know, you can go on holiday with it. You could, you know, you could just, yeah, I've had patients go overseas, go to like other parts of Europe, take you know, all of that can be organized with the feeding companies. And I just tend to tell you, it's just you know, it's just, you should just think of it as how that can fit into your lifestyle rather than the other way around. Like whatever you do, whether you work, study, you know, we can cut, you know, we can always have a chat, and it's all very individual. Everyone has different feeding regimens. So it should be, one day I might eat a bit more, so I'll have less feed. One day I'm not eating very well, I'll have more feed, you know. So rather than it being as prescriptive as, you know, people tend to think of it. And just the care is really important, but Neil will tell you more. People tell me they don't actually feel it. It might feel, you know, first odd for the first few days, but afterwards, yeah, it's just like having your ears pierced. That's what I'm told.
Neil, would you like to add anything to that, or is that you feel Angela's covered it?
Yeah, I think like Amanda was saying, like peg, you can't really feel it after you've had it for a while. It's like you don't even know it's there most of the time.
Excellent. Well, thanks both for your answers on that one. I've got a lot of questions that have been coming in, so I know we've got about 20 minutes. So if everyone's happy, I'm going to carry on to the next one. This one's from Bill, and he says, how do you balance carbs intake for energy / balanced diet with diabetes? I assume carb reduction for diabetes takes priority. Andrew, is that one that you could maybe?
Yeah, so it depends on what medication you're on for your carbohydrates as well, and you know, monitoring your blood sugars. So I would make sure I'm eating a regular diet and keeping to, like I said, the healthy plate model in terms of making sure the quantity and the quality of the carbohydrates is important. So the more complex carbohydrates are very slowly broken down. For example, porridge in the morning for breakfast is very slowly, the curve of the carbohydrate release is very slow. So that means wouldn't result in a very high blood sugar. But if you eat something like very quickly broken down, like, I don't know, the sugary cereals like the Kellogg's, or, you know, honey type Rice Krispies, etc., the curve is really quick. It's really a quick release, and then you feel tired quite quickly as well. So you would need to eat regularly. Of course, I don't know if you're on insulin or oral kind of, you know, medications for your diabetes, but making sure you have a source of carbohydrate at every meal, because if you don't have carbohydrate, you can have a low blood sugar and go for the complex ones. The Diabetes UK website is a really good source as well for help with meal plans, etc. But if you need more help, Bill, then definitely ask the GP to refer you to a dietitian. Yeah, that can, you know, help you further. Is that helpful?
And Neil, I know you live with type 2 diabetes. Is there anything you'd like to add on living with neuromuscular condition and diabetes?
Like it's a bit hard having the feed because obviously they contain a lot of sugar, but I'm on like medications for reduce our blood sugars, which kind of helps at the moment. So as long as you eat healthy and like try to avoid by eating sugary things as much as you can.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, I'm going to move us on to another question here, and it's from someone who says, I have a 12-year-old daughter with a myotonic dystrophy who struggles to chew a lot of foods, including meat. She has low iron levels and is on iron tablets. We have been referred to a dietitian, but her appointment isn't until late September. I was wondering if you have any advice for things that we can try while we're waiting.
So she has problems chewing meat. I suppose, what about if the GP has checked her iron levels? What about, is she, basically starting on an iron supplement or a multivitamin and mineral supplement, which will have iron as well? But in terms of, let me have a think actually about problems with chewing and iron. I'll come back to you while we are talking. Is that okay? While we're answering other questions. Yeah, I'm just trying to think things that are easy to chew, that are high. Oh, I suppose you could actually, sorry, I've just thought of something. Yeah, you could actually put foods in and blend it and make sure, like if you have vegetarian sources of iron like spinach, and meat sources, but making sure you have vitamin C drink, etc. afterwards, because that helps iron absorption in with vegetarian sources of iron. But you could opt for puree rather than chewing. There are companies, and even in the local supermarkets now, that will do soft food that don't require as much effort with chewing. And it might mean that she has a main meal, she might be already doing this earlier on in the day. So I'd say the consistency of what she's eating, there are iron rich like meat, chicken, etc. sources that might not be as tough as having meat. And then is that okay?
Thanks, Ange.
Yeah.
I have another question here from someone who says, where can liquid fiber product be obtained?
So that's a good question. So I have started using this product, like I showed you in the presentation, and that can be prescribed via the GP. You just have to make sure you are drinking well, because if you have fiber and you don't drink well, you don't have enough fluid, you will still get constipated. So fiber and water work together. I always think of it as a sponge, a dry sponge and a wet sponge. The wet sponge is the fiber with water. It moves easily down the bowel, and the dry sponge is the fiber without water, without being hydrated. So that can be prescribed through the GP, and it's called high fiber supplement. Some people have bought it as well. I can send you the company name, Bobby, to
Andrew, if you want to add it to into.
Oh yes. The other thing is, the other thing is, I thought we could, because the company can send you a sample to trial before you actually, buy it. So fine, I'll do that.
Yeah, well, as I think I mentioned earlier, this will be on our website as a recorded kind of seminar, so
fine.
we can within that.
I'm putting in the answer now in the chat.
Thanks, Ange. So, Neil, is this? Tell me if I've got this completely wrong, but is this something that you would yourself be getting hold of?
I actually think I have too much fiber now, so I have the opposite problem of trying to take less fiber. So
okay, thanks for clearing that one up.
Just to add to that, if you have too much of fiber, like Neil said, you will have loose stools. So there's that balance of getting it right.
Getting it right.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody here says, I have inclusion body myositis, IBM, and I've been using a wheelchair for the last 2 years. So how do I get a dietary assessment?
So I don't know where, if you've been seen at a center for your IBM, or whether the GP keeps an eye on your weight. So the points that I mentioned in the presentation. So, you know, if you're losing weight, you're eating less than normal, you have weakness, you're taking longer to eat, you're choking, you have, you know, if you're having any infections, you're leaving out foods that cause problems, for example, dried, you know, bread, crisps, toast, etc. So I think the GP should refer you to a dietitian. Yeah. Or your local center where you've been seen for your IBM. Yeah, the consultants should be able to do that. Or at least get a screening done when you go in to see them.
Excellent. Thanks, Angela. That's really, really helpful. Yeah. So there's another quick question here. It says, I've noticed that it's taking longer for me to eat meals and I've lost some weight. I'm a bit worried about this. Is there anything that you could advise?
So yes, I think if you've lost weight, then you probably need, whether you change to making sure whatever you're eating, you get the most out of your calories. So it's hard to give general advice, but it might be that you eat high calorie, high protein. So if you're eating, you know, if you're eating less, if you're managing less than what you were normally managing, that whatever you're eating, you get most out of the small portion. So it might mean a pudding in this case, you know, or adding calories to your meals, such as butter, etc. Or it might mean that you need a bit of help and you start on some high calorie drinks. Like I said, they're very small volume. I tend to go for as small volume, as high calorie as possible, because it's an effort to get the drinks in. So I try and make it as easy as possible. So yeah, so I would say a referral as well to have that. Did I answer the question? Yeah. I forgot the question while I was talking. Yeah.
I think you did.
Yeah.
So there's another question, not follow up, but it's a slightly different one. So how do I eat well to maintain a healthy weight and diet, particularly if my mobility is limited and I cannot exercise the way that I used to?
So yes, so like I was saying in the talk, you need to make sure you get you choose the type of food. So if you know your requirements would be lower because you're you know, if you have limited mobility, so it would mean eating a healthy diet, but probably avoiding the high fat. So eating regularly, so having, you know, making sure you have fuel for the body, eating a good breakfast, such as, you know, the you know, I don't know, 2 slices of toast. So portion sizes are important and what you eat is important. So just general healthy eating advice that we should all be following, really, but just having to think more, because it's harder to lose weight. It's so hard to get weight off because your requirements are so low. So making sure you avoid, you know, I don't know, if you have a pasta sauce, go for the tomato-based ones rather than the creamy ones, because like I was saying, food breaks down into energy in the body. The fat breaks down into 9 calories per every gram. Protein and carbs breaks down, and vegetables break down into 4 calories per gram. So it's what you eat, making sure you have that healthy plate model, you know, eating fruits and vegetables, or eating vegetables in between, having a healthy yogurt, you know, so eating regularly and having a balanced, yeah, diet, using that plate model that I shared in the talk.
Thanks, Angela. So yeah, as mentioned before, we'll be able to go back and we'll be able to look at the presentation and refer to that at our leisure after this session. So I think we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left. So if you do have another question, please do add it to the Q&A quickly. But I've got another one here, which is that I have noticed that it's taking longer for me to eat meals and I've lost some weight. I'm a bit worried about this. Is there anything you could advise? So Angela or Neil, do jump in, Neil.
Oh yeah, Neil, feel free to jump in, because Neil and I know each other for a long time, from before PEG, right, Neil? I'm sure.
Yeah,
We've known each other for so long. We've celebrated 30th, 40th, everything together, as in mine and his. Yeah. And but I would say, yeah, it's really important to be proactive, right, Neil, and start tackling it now before the weight loss drops too much.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's what I found before I got the PEG, that I was like really not eating that much, and the weight was dropping, but like I managed to like keep on top of it by like having like extra supplements just to make up for the loss of nutrition.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, doing that, and whatever you're eating, making sure you get the most out of the calories. So it might mean, if you can eat really high calorie, having full fat milk in the morning, adding a fat and sugary sources to your main meals, having pudding. So whatever you're eating, you're getting the most energy from it, especially if you're losing weight, but also, yeah, having some nutritional supplements that would help. So getting a referral as well, or getting the GP, yeah, to refer and start you on something ASAP.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as there's no more questions in the Q&A apart from this last one that I'm gonna put to you. So this could be our last question for today. So I'm avoiding certain foods as they have a tendency to stick in my throat. I'm worried that I am restricting nutritious foods such as fruits and vegetables because I'm scared of choking. Yeah. Is there a way around this?
So yeah, that's not unusual. So when I often see people, I'll be like, "Oh, do you have any choking problems?" No, but what are you avoiding? And then the list is long. So yeah, that's really important question, and it's really important to be aware and to think about. You could, I would say, start on a multivitamin and mineral. I often do that when people are not getting all their food, but I would say you need a review as well. It might mean that you could better meet your needs with nutritional supplements prescribed by the dietitian, or we start thinking about alternative feeding to better stop weight from going down, etc. So it's good to monitor and be proactive. Yeah.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, well, thank you both, Neil and Angela, for your time today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and for that presentation. I'm sure presentation, Angela, will be really useful to people to be able to refer to, and I know that MDUK will be signposting people to this in the future.
Amazing.
But unfortunately, that's the end of today's session. And I'd like to thank Angela and Neil for their time again, and there were some really great questions shared. So thank you everybody who's fed into the Q&A function. Finally, there's a reminder that you can see recordings of all the other Muscle Matter seminars on our website. So if this was the first one that you've been to and you'd like to know what else we've been covering, do check out the website, and they're all there online. And the recording of this session will be posted on the website later this week. We'll also be in touch with a very short survey to gather some feedback on this session, which will be absolutely invaluable as we shape how we do these in the future. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Where do I leave? Oh, there we go.
I think that we are now alone, but I'm not sure.
Oh yeah.
And the UK has left the meeting, so we'll say thanks so much, Neil. Thanks so much, Angela. Was that okay for you?
Yeah, no, that was okay. I hope I answered all the questions. I must say the iron thing I really had to think.
You go.
Yeah.
And if something came to mind later, the idea will be that we'll put this on the site, and we'll add any extras. We've always got that. That's the beauty of doing things online, is you can always add things in later. So.
Yeah, no, it was really helpful. Thanks so much, Neil.
How was it for you, Neil? Was it okay?
Yeah, it was quite good for me to actually be involved in something that affects me a lot as well. So
and I think that your answer in
Yeah.
particular to the PEG question will be so valuable to people, because it's I'm sure
Everyone's so scared, and the decision is so hard. Like, Neil, you had to do it,
but once I had it done, it was
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
you made that really clear.
Yeah, and I think Neil and I knowing each other from before, I think, Neil, you correct me if I'm wrong, is helpful as well, so that we kind of build a trust, and I kind of understand what's going on. So I think dietitians are so important in muscular dystrophies from the beginning. Like, it's so hard to find peds dietitians who see them unless there's like a major problem when they're on the ward. Whereas I feel like you should meet them in clinic, get to know them, and so then you know when there are problems. But amazing. Hope you had a good break, Bobby.
Well, it wasn't really a break. I mean, I had sort of
I know you were answering all my
day.
emails. I felt so bad.
The big thing I've got, I am COVID negative, but I've got like this like 2-week long kind of flu cough.
Oh gosh.
But we are socially distancing, so we're okay.
Okay.
But does my voice sound okay?
Yeah. I didn't notice anything, but yeah.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. That's all that mattered, as long as there was clear. But thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll be in touch asking for many things in the future. And Neil, there's a project in particular that I would like maybe to approach you about, the standards of care which Angela was involved in developing for adults living with Duchenne. And we need at some point to adapt these into a family/lay version, which is basically something that's appropriate for people living with the condition themselves. And it would be great to have your involvement if you're keen. Shaping.
So
it'd be really, really helpful.
Contact me. That's fine.
Thanks so much, Neil. Cool. Okay, I hope we haven't been recorded for this bit.
Oh yeah.
I'll see you later on.
See you later. See you soon, Neil. Bye. Bye.